It's Tuesday, June 18th, 2024, and welcome to another edition of the Zogby Report, Real and Unscripted. Jeremy and I take a look about weekly and for the past 4.5 years at the issues of the day, and predominantly from the point of view of pollsters who try to capture public opinion. Jer, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Yourself?
I'm doing fine. I thought we would talk about the state of the race. We have just about 4.5 months to go. Hard to believe when people will vote for the next president of the United States. And good time to take a deep breath. There's been so much going on. And to take a look at where things stand. So if we look at the overall picture, of course, it's tied. You know, the Real Clear Politics average has Donald Trump leading by 0.8. And the last 4 polls that have been taken, Biden leads in 2 of them by 1 point. Donald Trump leads in 2 of them by 1 and 2 points. That's really about as close as you can get. When you add the minor candidates in the race, the story is about the same, though Trump leads by about 2.5 percentage points. And of course, we have a debate coming up 11 days from now, actually 9 days from now. But if you look at the race in pieces, you get a different story. So much of a different story that this week's Economist magazine, which uses analytics from polling and elsewhere to project how things would go from this point in time, suggests the likely winner at this point in time is Donald Trump. And they do that on the basis not only of the overall national polls, but the battleground states. We've talked about this before, but I want to get into it just a little more detail. You've got 2 segments of battleground states. You've got kind of the southern rim, which goes from North Carolina to Georgia, across to Arizona and Nevada. I'm sure I missed 1 or 2 in between, but that's the southern rim. And there, what you find is that Donald Trump is leading, in some instances by 4 and 5 percentage points. And also because some of the groups that Joe Biden had heavily relied upon in 2020 springboarded him to victory and winning all of those states except for North Carolina are composed of Latinos and blacks who are not supporting Joe Biden thus far in any way, shape, or form close to the support that they gave him in 2020. But then you have the northern segment of the battleground states, and that's Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And there's a different story. Actually, Trump, quote unquote, leads in all 3 states, but it's 0.1% in Wisconsin, about 1% in Michigan, and it's less than 1% in Pennsylvania, which means those are wide open. We've gone through this before. These are real battleground states. If, in fact, Joe Biden loses that entire southern rim, his only path to victory is he must win the northern rim. And that would give him 269 electoral votes. You need 270 to win. Where does he get the additional electoral vote if he doesn't win any of those southern states? The Nebraska and Maine. Nebraska's first congressional district around Omaha, and so is the blue part of Nebraska. Otherwise, it's a giant red, scarlet state. Or he wins the district in Maine. Single districts, those are the only 2 states actually that break up electoral votes. That would give him 270, just what he would need to win, a la George W. Bush in 2000. So where we stand right now, I'm not going to say a likely Donald Trump victory, not when you have margins like this and so long to go. I'm also not going to say a likely Donald Trump victory because a recent poll by our colleagues at Ipsos for Political Magazine shows that 21% of independents that they recently polled said that they are less likely to vote for Donald Trump because of his conviction. And so we'll see where things stand. Trump with an ever so slight, I'll put that in quotation marks, lead over Joe Biden. Biden must win states and must win with bigger margins among key groups, all of which we've talked about before, but can get into more detail. But the state of the race, tied right now, nowhere near projecting a winner. What do you think?
Yeah, wow. That was a fantastic tour de force of the political landscape. I could just pepper in some details. Maybe I'll work backwards. So we'll start with the Ipsos. I mean, that sounds, and I just read that too, and it sounds very convincing about the 21% of independents. That's a pretty good portion of the independent unaffiliated tribe. And I think of them as a tribe because it's a loose band, right? When you really break it out, and I'll talk about that in a second, you'll see why. But, and it's key to highlight that data point of 21% because Biden, if I'm going by memory, in 2020 nationally, won independents by 13 percentage points, right? So that's a key number. But when you dissect this camp, in the most basic sense, you have right-leaning independents, you have left-leaning independents, you have independents who have voted equally, both Democrat and Republican. You also have independents who tend to vote neither and go minor. But there's actually other little groups in there too. We do this when we poll. The whole spectrum is usually for the Republicans, sometimes Democrat, almost always for the Republican. That should be first. And then you get to the equally both, and then the exact same on the left side. Usually for the Dem, sometimes the Republican, almost always for the Dem. And so when you break it up like that, 21 percentage points may not be that significant because obviously the Democrat-leaning independents are going to tend to vote for Biden. The Republican-leaning independents are going to tend to vote for Trump. It's that middle who have virtually voted equally for both parties. They are the largest, and in poll after poll after poll, we have seen that they are favoring Trump. Actually, I should take that back. It seesaws, but there is a tendency for them to favor Trump as of recently. For a while, they were flirting with Kennedy too, and Kennedy still has a decent amount of support among that core group, the largest group. So that's the first data point. I'm trying to bring complexity to this notion of the independents because we tend to see them in terms of like a singularity, and really they're a loose band. They're like a confederation of unaffiliated voters. So that's all to say it could really swing either way. To your point, the race is very close, but because we're not trying to project, and nobody really should be trying to project right now what's going to happen in November, the best we can do is say what's going to happen now. Mm-hmm. And if we go by now, if the election were tomorrow or the election were today, Trump would probably win. And you laid out the southern rim of the battleground states, and you kind of pointed to the fact, more or less, pointed to the fact that the attrition for the Democrats and for Biden is coming from Latino voters, more of them are going Trump, and black voters who we're seeing in the polls. Sometimes the overall black vote is close to 20%. So maybe somewhere around maybe 17%. This is nationally, okay? Where that goes in each individual battleground state, it is, going to fluctuate a little bit, nonetheless significant. But what's driving that is no doubt the economy. But there's also, if you go to the southern rim, there's immigration and the border. And clearly, when you look in, you zero in on Nevada and Arizona, that issue on top of the economy and crime, but the issue of immigration is a major factor in why Trump is in a more comfortable lead in a lot of the polls in those two states. When you talk about the northern rim, particularly Michigan and Pennsylvania, Biden does tend to do better there. And I can't help but think that that's maybe because of blue dog voters and union voters. They're probably more likely to side with Biden. But so that's just kind of peppering a little more detail to what you said, which you covered very well. The only other thing that I'll bring to the conversation right now is issues and intensity. And so when we do polling and we look at what are the issues that voters tell us are going to drive them to the polls and for whom, basically we'll give a list of 10 or 11 of what we think are the most important issues of the day. And we ask them which two are going to, decide your vote. And then we can even slice it up and see by candidate who's going to be driven. Poll after poll after poll, it's the economy and it's immigration that are top two. Tier one, the economy and inflation, something like 50% of voters cite that as the top issue. Immigration, tier two, in the high 20s. But then you get all these tier three, and this is important because I'm going to break this down by partisan, and there's some interesting dynamics here. The tier three issues get around 20%, meaning 20% of the electorate overall cite various issues: abortion, climate, also crime. That's a third one. And so, those are important issues. Those are wedge issues. But then when we look at it by party, this is the key. This is the most key point. If you zero in on Republicans, it's like 60% go with economy and inflation, and 30 to 40% go with immigration. And then after that, there's really no other major issue driving Republicans. So on the one hand, that's a strength for Republicans because that's intensity. That's a juggernaut. That's a very focused political viewpoint, and it makes it easy for Republicans to message, just drive those messages. But, as a strategist, I can't help but see the weakness in that, because when we look to the Democrats, sure, inflation tops it, albeit less intensity, somewhere around the 40%. But here's where it gets interesting with the Democrats. Then you'll have climate, abortion, the environment. Some will even cite crime. And there's a larger basket of issues that Democrats are concerned about. And so I think of the analogy of an investor who puts all their eggs in one basket. Never a good strategy. That seems to be what the Republicans are doing. They're putting all their eggs in one basket of two baskets, really, of economy / inflation and immigration. But when you see Democratic voters, they're more motivated by more issues. It is abortion, it is crime, it is the immigration, it is the environment, it is the economy. And so the Democrats, I would say, are better spread. And so there's two ways to look at it, just to sum it up again. You could see that as their intensity is diluted, the Democrats, or you could see that they're spread across more issues, and good Democratic strategists could really work that in their favor.
Yeah, and let me build on that. Those are really brilliant comments. Abortion's a winner for Democrats. I'm not saying that conceptually. I'm saying that realistically. It has been in every special and state and referendum election since 2022. But in addition to that, if you look at that second tier, first and second tier of issues, number one, the rate of inflation has actually gone down. The rate of growth of inflation has actually gone down. That's a selling point. So much so that it stopped the Federal Reserve from a rate cut at this point. Unemployment is at 4%. There is robust, in fact, even surprising job growth. Wholesale prices are down. Wages outpaced the rate of inflation again this month. FBI has a new report indicating that crime, in particular violent crime and murder, are down dramatically in the United States, especially in major cities. And what you have then should be Democratic talking points. And yet, on the other hand, the president just can't seem to break through on those messages. He's going to battleground states and to key areas where the administration is actually spending money and ground is being dug for new jobs programs. And the president may end up a net winner on the Hunter Biden conviction. I think that Americans are less likely to blame a parent, more likely in many instances to be empathetic to someone who has suffered another tragedy. That meaning even more so than Hunter, the president of the United States himself. And we know that in 2020 that empathy actually helped Joe Biden springboard to the presidency. And so all is not lost on the Democratic side, but at this point in time, it's tough. It looks very tough, making that debate on June 27th even more important. You think a lot of people are going to watch the debate?
I really don't know. I probably, I think they will, but who knows, right? I just want to say that I think that Democrats and Biden could really walk into a trap with that, because that's establishment language, and we have to be careful with that. And I'll tell you why. Because that kind of gets into gaslighting. Like if you're trying to sell voters on the fact that the economy is actually good, when all they're going to do is look at their receipts and they're going to see that food is up. Those who don't own a home, who rent, are going to tell you, rightfully so, rent is way up. Rent is way up. There's just no way around that. And then for those who are looking for a home, they're going to tell you that they can't either afford one or they can't get one because the mortgage rates and the monthly mortgage payments are way up. So that's going to be a hard sell. That's going to be a wonky, statistical kind of guru playing game with the data selling point, which I think is just going to lead to gaslighting, because the perception is, and arguably rightfully so, that Americans feel a lot poorer and that they're having a very difficult time saving. They're using their credit cards more. That's at least on the inflation front. On the job growth front, it depends on how you window dress the data. The fact of the matter is there are more jobs, but a lot of them are part-time jobs. There are more jobs, but a lot of Americans are working 3 and 4 jobs just to keep up with, to have ends meet. And so there's that. And then, with the FBI statistics, this is where independents and even, to an extent, the large city voters, especially those who are leaving the cities, what are they going to say? Why are they leaving the cities? You got a lot of people who are fleeing New York City, people who are leaving LA, people who are leaving San Francisco, Portland, tens of thousands of people going to other states, and among them is because the drugs and the crime are out of control. So I think, as a strategist from that point of view, the Democrats they might be walking into a trap by trying to sell the government data narrative. They would be better to come up with a better plan to address those problems. I would just suggest that. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, ultimately, the question is going to have to be answered by that critical mass of about 5% of voters. That's nothing new. It always comes down to that last group of 5%. Would Donald Trump do any better? And that, of course, is an albatross around his neck. There are those among his supporters who say that, hey, I was doing better. That is, his supporters this time around, including some former Biden voters. But yeah, ultimately, where we stand right now is at par, slight edge to Donald Trump.
So that's it. We did it. Thanks, and have a good week.
Yeah, have a good week.